Namaste, angels. This is, oh, something just went across the table. This is the weekly general reading for the period of Sunday, November 18th through Saturday, November 24th. I am expecting this particular week to come across as I read, what's going on in the spiritual world, as far as different theology and beliefs of people all around the world. Some of you guys, the celestial system, what's going on there. I expect to see a lot of coincidences that tie into my own life. For example, like a lot of 6/13, which is my birthday, equals 19, which is the number that represents Father for me. Those of you who've been watching me for a while, you guys know that, and you know how and why it does. Anybody who is unfamiliar, newcomers, welcome to you. The reason is because back in 2015, King Osiris appeared to me, as he did many times on this occasion, told me to celebrate his birthday and have his birthday celebrated on November 19th. This year, in addition to him, we are also celebrating the Prophet Muhammad's birthday, which is in November, technically, every year. Although, if you look it up, some places will tell you that the Prophet Muhammad's birthday is April 22nd in the year 570. But most places will say they have no idea. I'm sorry, the year 571. But most places will say that he was born in 570 and they have no idea on what day. However, Muslims and the Muslim countries officially celebrate his birthday during this Muslim month, which began on the 9th of November, just like the Jewish month, the Hebrew month, and goes into December. So for us, it's November. And the day on which they recognize it is based on the moon, but it's always going to be this period here, this month. So this year, it's the same day that King Osiris told me to do his birthday, which is November 19th, which is an equivalent of like 2019, the year that we're almost upon. That's an 1119 with 2 equal 11. And so I expect to see a bunch of syncs and signs like that as I read what's here. But I have not read them prior to now. And so we're going to read it together. And that's why I just wanted to, I guess, forewarn that I may stop, I may point some things out, or you may, maybe I won't, and you'll just catch them on your own. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the 18th, the first day for which this reading is the dedication of the basilicas of Saints Peter and Paul, apostles, okay? That's on the Christian calendar, of course. And to read a little bit about that, I'm just going to go to www.wikipedia.org, dedication of Saints Peter and Paul. The dedication of the basilicas of the apostles Peter and Paul is a feast day on the liturgical calendar of the Catholic Church, which is celebrated on November 18th. This feast combines the standard celebration of the dedication of the church for St. Peter's Basilica and the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, which were both built by the Emperor Constantine the Great during the 4th century. Of course, 4 also equals master number 22 or 1111, or however you want to look at that, 13. These sites had already been visited by pilgrims for over a century when the basilicas were built to honor the apostles, traditionally believed to have been buried there. So what they're saying is they believe that Peter and Paul were buried there already, and that the ground wasn't honored, respected, as happened so many times, right? We've got Africans buried all around my neighborhood here. And we just put, skyscrapers on top of them, basically, and then cut out a little square just a few years ago that's called the African Burial Ground, where we're recognizing them. But all around here, the 5 points, if you watch the movie Gangs of New York, even there they show it that's where the slaves lived, where the natives lived is also around here, and you don't respect them either. So similarly, Peter and Paul believed to have been buried in this place, 2 apostles, and nobody gave a shit until years later, after pilgrims had already trampled all over it. The basilicas were originally joined by a colonnade. So it's kind of like a colonnade is like a long series of columns which I guess can form like a pathway, tunnel. I don't know. A pathway, I guess, is the best way to say it. Speaking of tunnel, right now in my neighborhood, right now also Joaquin, who is shares a name with Mary's father, Joaquin El Chapo, is on trial. They moved his trial is in Brooklyn, but they're holding him over here, like just a block or two from me. So I just thought about him with the tunnels, because that's how he always escaped from jail, except this time he did not. Anyway, they were joined by this colonnade, which was built despite the distance of several miles between them. So for miles, they've got these lines of columns between St. Peter's and St. Paul's churches, basically. The significance in the Catholic Church is emphasized in the reference made to them in the obligation on Catholic bishops, because Catholic bishops have to basically go on a pilgrimage every 5 years or so. They have it written in Latin here, so I'm going to skip over that. But here they explain, in which they are required to go to the quote unquote, to the tombs of the apostles in Rome every 5 years. Yes, to report on the status of their diocese or their prelatures. This requirement was initially set out in the year 1585. 1585 equals 613 equals 19. There you go. That's what I was talking about. I knew it was going to pop up. So in that year, Pope Sixtus, that's his name, Sixtus, like the number 6 for Mary. Wait, that's not it. Pope Sixtus V, so like 6 plus 5 equals 11, who issued the papal bull Romanus Pontifex, which is established the norms of these visits. So in this book is where it's written down as a rule that they have to do this. On the 31st of December, in the year 1909, which equals 19, because anything added to 9 is itself. The 31st of December is 6, right? 3 and 3. Or 3, yeah, we can look at it that way too. 3, 3. Ascended Masters again. Pope Pius X, which 19 also equals, and is represented here by an X, right? The Roman numeral 10, decreed that a bishop needs to report to the Pope an account of the state of his diocese every 5 years, starting in the year 1911, which is what transposed? 1119. Boom. All this stuff is hidden in plain sight. I'm part of my life purpose, soul purpose, is to point it out to you. So moving on to the 21st of November, which is Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, we will have the Thanksgiving in the United States. I realize not everybody watching me is in the United States, and some of you guys have your own Thanksgiving, and some of you probably don't celebrate Thanksgiving at all. It's funny, we also had the other day in California, they took down, speaking of Thanksgiving and pilgrims, they just took down a Christopher Columbus statue in Las Vegas last week. All right, the 21st is the presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And for that, I went to Franciscan Media, www.franciscanmedia.org. The presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Saint of the Day, for November 21st. Mary's presentation was celebrated in Jerusalem in the 6th century. Mary is represented by 6. A church was built there in honor of this mystery. The Eastern Church was more interested in the feast, but it does appear in the West in the 11th century. Although the Feast of Times disappeared from the calendar in the 16th century, 16 equals 7 equals God, it became a feast of the universal church. As with Mary's birth, we read of Mary's presentation in the temple only in the apocryphal literature. This is why I had mentioned, well, I guess why I had thought about Mary's father also, Joaquin, in connection with Joaquin El Chapo in those tunnels, because this feast day is about her having been born and being presented to the world. In what is recognized as an unhistorical account, the Proto-Evangelium of James tells us that Anna and Joaquin offered Mary to God in the temple when she was 3 years old. Okay, they had promised that in advance. They asked God for a child. They were old, barren, or I guess it only matters that Anne was old. She was, menopausal, and barren, and asked God to still bless her with a child, or up in age, right? Not necessarily menopausal, maybe premenopausal. The way they describe it is why I said menopausal. But perhaps she still had her period. I don't know. But she was of age, up in age. And they asked God, could they still have a child? Because they were like the laughing stock of their neighborhood, that they were, had no children. And God said that they would give them, that she would give them a child, but that they were going to have to commit that child to service, back to God, to the church. So this is why this was done. Oh, okay. They're going to tell you that. Never mind. Forget I just said that. This was to carry out a promise made to God when Anna was still childless. I could have just read it. Oh, goodness. Though it cannot be proven historically, Mary's presentation has an important theological purpose. It continues the impact of the Feast of the Immaculate Conception and of the birth of Mary. It emphasizes that the holiness conferred on Mary from the beginning of her life on earth continued through her early childhood and beyond. It's sometimes difficult for modern Westerners to appreciate a feast like this. The Eastern Church, however, was quite open to this feast and even somewhat insistent about celebrating it, even though the feast has no basis in history. It stresses an important truth about Mary. From the beginning of her life, she was dedicated to God. She herself became a greater temple than any made by hands. God came to dwell in her in a marvelous manner and sanctified her for her unique role in God's saving work. At that time, the magnificence of Mary enriches her children. We too are temples of God and sanctified in order that we might enjoy and share in God's saving work. Oop. Okay, and that is the end of what goes on in the Christian calendar this week that I'm going to speak of. Next week, we'll talk about one of my favorite saints, Saint Andrew the Apostle, on the 30th. Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. I did a video specifically on him and King Osiris only, but I do want to read something brief here. I still recommend that those who haven't seen it do watch it, but I want to talk about him a little bit here too, just brief. And this is from www.biography.com/people/Muhammad. Muhammad, military leader, philosopher, prophet, the year 570 through the year 562. So this is what I was talking about a few moments ago when I said, a couple of places it's noted that his birthday is April 22nd, the year 571, which is a date that I like. It's 44-11-11, right? 444, because 571 equals 13 or 4. So I like the numbers, but most places will say that he was born in the year 570, as this does, and not give a date. Again, however, the Muslim countries recognize him in November. That's one of the coincidences, because it's the same time that King Osiris instructed me to recognize him and to have him recognized. It is also the birthday of my own catalyst on the romantic part of the journey. right? The part that relates to divine partnership, not my awakening. I was actually rather awakened, although, you know, I'm not the pinnacle. I'm still not. And when people cease to evolve and grow and learn, my opinion is they have no reason to be here anymore. Like, they've completed their purpose, they might as well be dead. So no, I'm not trying to describe myself as having been, you know, fully awakened and not needing anything else from the universe and having nothing else to learn or to contribute, for that matter. But I was talking about 333 and actually had that as like my avatar on Facebook, you know, 8-9 years ago. And nobody knew what the heck I was talking about. I guess I probably didn't know what the heck I was talking about either. And I've been psychic all my life, like as I've explained before. So that wasn't new, and he didn't prompt that in me. But as far as this other thing where I, you know, feeling connected to another person's soul in a weird way, I had never felt before. So it is his birthday as well. You guys can join me in wishing him a happy birthday. And anybody else, any other Scorpios celebrating your birthday the last, 3-4 days of Scorpio season? The 19th, 20th, and 21st. Yes, 3 more days. Some people count the 22nd too. So I will throw that in there and say 4 more days. There's another 4. All right, so anyway, Muhammad. Yes, Muhammad is the prophet and founder of Islam. He was born in Mecca in the year 570. Most of his early life was spent as a merchant. At age 40, another 4, and of course 40 in the scriptures in general, the Islamic ones, the Hebrew scriptures, or the Torah, Kabbalah, certainly the Bible. You guys know, those of you who are at all familiar with theology or any of these books, know how important the number 40 is. Right, Jesus went to the mountains 40 days and 40 nights and all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, at age 40, Muhammad began to have revelations from Allah that became the basis for the Quran and the foundation of Islam. By the year 630, so I'm not sure why they're skipping to 630, but in 610, and also recorded some places on 610, as in June 10th, in the year 610, which is my children's father's birthday, my ex-husband's birthday, is the day that he began to like preach the Quran or teach it, speak it aloud, share it with other people. This jumps to the year 630 though. And it says by then he had unified most of Arabia under a single religion. Of course, that religion being Islam. As of the year 2015, there were over 1.8 billion Muslims in the world who profess, quote, "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet." Muhammad was born, again, around the year 570 AD in Mecca, which is now Saudi Arabia. His father died before he was born. How, you know, that's traditional too, right? For these figures, we'll say, to not have fathers raising them, right? Jesus had a stepfather, Saint Joseph. He didn't have who's believed to be his actual father, particularly if you're a Christian, right? Malcolm X, who I said last week in my Prophet Muhammad and King Osiris video, I was discussing how Islam believes, contends that Muhammad is the last or was the final prophet. Because Islam accepts all the other prophets. They accept Jesus, they accept Elijah, Abraham, not only accept them, but raise them up. Mary, or Mariama, her real name, she's one of the 4 like revered women in the Quran. They highly, highly respect these people. They don't count them out like some of the other religions do to Islam. They don't discount these people. They just believe that Muhammad was the final prophet, and that Jesus was not, you know, the Messiah. Although that gets kind of funny and touchy too, because there are Muslims and you know, there are Muslims who believe that Isa, which is Jesus, Mariama's son, in the Quran, was the Messiah. So which would be Jesus. So it's the same thing. Anyway, I was talking about that, and I said, in my opinion, and based on actual calculations that I did, mathematical calculations that I did, not sitting at this very table because I used to have a different table, but sitting here at my desk on film, on camera, back in 2015 when I started, Malcolm X was the final, prophet of that magnitude. Because, of course, I consider myself a prophet to an extent, and other people. But as far as a major prophet, worth, that's noteworthy, Malcolm X, in my opinion, and based on like I said, my calculations, and those calculations were based on the book of Daniel and a bunch of 40s, a bunch of number 40s and sevens, actually, 77s and weeks. And if you go look at the book of Daniel, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm joking. But, I actually did the math and came up with 1965, the year that this person who was coming to do work they were not going to be able to finish was going to be murdered. So that was Malcolm X to me, or is Malcolm X to me. And he grew up without his father. His father was murdered. So Muhammad lost his father. That's long story short, that's to what I was getting to. All of these figures tend to be raised without a father. And, of course, a lot of us are as well. It's part of being made in his image. Okay. So his father died before he was born, and he was raised first by his grandfather and then by his uncle. So they all have these like stepfathers that step in, and many of us do as well, or many of the divine masculine. He belonged to a poor but respectable family of the Quraysh tribe. The family was active in Meccan politics and trade. Many of the tribes living in the Arabian Peninsula at the time were nomadic, trading goods as they crisscrossed the desert. Most tribes were polytheistic. That means they worshiped a whole bunch of gods, right? Worshipping their own set of gods is what it says here. The town of Mecca was an important trading and religious center, home to many temples and worship sites where the devoted prayed to idols of these gods. The most famous was the site at Kaaba, meaning cube in Arabic. It is believed to have been built by Abraham. So as I was saying, they believe in Abraham, or Ibrahim to Muslims, and his son Ismail, or Ishmael, right? Call me Ishmael, which is his son born to Hagar, his Egyptian slave, his firstborn son. So I always like to mention that too and make that clear when people talk about like only Jews, and then they equate that to today's European Jews to even further misspeak. That's incorrect. It's not only Jews or Hebrews. Even in the scriptures, the Torah, they're all very clear that there were Egyptians and those who were considered Jews or Hebrews that were part of Exodus and that were part of the 12 tribes of Abraham, beginning with his firstborn son, Ishmael. So we're not talking about him today, but since they brought him up, I want to make that clear again here too. Ishmael's mother was Egyptian. Gradually, the people of Mecca turned to polytheism and idolatry. Of all the gods worshipped, it's believed that Allah was considered the greatest and the only one without an idol. In his early teens, Muhammad worked in a camel caravan, following in the footsteps of many people of his age, born of meager wealth. Working for his uncle, he gained experience in commercial trade, traveling to Syria and eventually from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean. In time, Muhammad earned a reputation as an honest and sincere, acquiring the nickname Al-Amin, meaning faithful or trustworthy. In his early 20s, Muhammad began working for a wealthy merchant woman named Qadia. 15 years his senior. 15 equals 6. I just want to point out also that this is a correlation to, again, similar to the fact that many don't have a father or are raised by a stepfather. This is a correlation to divine unions and that very popular aspect or template where the female is the masculine's senior. In this case, it's 15 years. Soon he became attracted. She became attracted to this young, accomplished man and proposed marriage. She proposed to him. He accepted, and over the years, the happy union brought several children. Not all lived to childhood, but one, Fatima, which is Fatima. The same thing is like Our Lady of Fatima. It's spelled the same way. Fatima, Fatima. Our Lady of Fatima is, of course, a series of feast days beginning May 13th in the year 1917, with the largest and most notable and the biggest. It's one of the hugest feast days celebrated in the world today still, Our Lady of Fatima, June 13th, because that's the day that Mary said, come back with your neighborhood, with your communities, and let them see me too, on June 13th, 1917. So, of course, that again correlates to my birthday down to the year that equals 99. I was born in a year with the same digits. You guys I'll let you figure it out yourselves, do the math. But yeah, same exact digits. So with my birthday equaling 1999 or just plain old 19. And that is my life path number, 19/10/1, which is the karmic numbers. Okay, so back to this. Fatima would marry Muhammad's cousin, Ali ibn Abi Talib, whom Shiite Muslims regard as Muhammad's successor. I just want to point out one more thing about Fatima, because her name, now it has a few meanings. It means captivating to some. Some will say it means captivating. And then I've heard faith for it, but I know Imani and variations of that name to mean faith also in Arabic. But one that I think is pretty interesting about Fatima is the shining one. So it's kind of like the lighted ones, the illumined ones. That's one of her the meanings of the name Fatima. Captivating is interesting too, but not as cool as the shining one to me. She is one of those women that I was talking about, like Mary. She is considered one of the 4 perfect women mentioned in the Quran, and the other 3 are Aisha, Khadijah, which is my daughter's middle name, my oldest daughter, and Mary, which of course is my name. So there goes some more coincidences. Well, Mariama. When they say Mary, it's Mariama. So yeah, going back to Muhammad, he was also very religious, taking journeys of devotion to sacred sites near Mecca. On one of his pilgrimages in the year 610, okay, here we go. Remember I was just telling you about 610 on 610? He was meditating in a cave on Mount Jabal al-Nur. The angel Gabriel appeared and relayed the word of God. Yes, the same angel Gabriel that's in the Bible and the Torah, that same angel, the same angel Gabriel that went to Mariama to tell her she was pregnant with Jesus, Isa, that same Gabriel appeared to Muhammad. Isn't that interesting? We're not so different is basically the point. This is all about oneness and unification of humanity. But this belief in one God in a spiritual way, without all these funky religions and rules and different groups of people thinking that they have mastered all there is to know and, you know, have the key, where everybody else is left in you know, to their own devices or in the dark somewhere. That's not how God intended it. So that's why he has me do this stuff and teach this stuff week after week. Why my readings aren't like anybody else's. Why my channel isn't like anybody else's. Why I'm not here to just try to get as many people to watch as possible. So why I won't make adjustments to like appease or please anybody in particular and have my channel be a certain way or my videos be a certain way or a certain length or whatever, is because my purpose is, you know, to get this word out, not to, you know, necessarily be a YouTube sensation. Although maybe that'll be part of it too. One day, maybe it won't. I don't care. Is the point, because that's not what I was told. That's not what I've been told I'm here to do. So anyway, that same angel Gabriel appeared and relayed the word of God. He said, recite in the name of your Lord who creates man from a clot. Recite, for your Lord is most generous. These words became the opening verses of Surah. You know, like Jill Scott, she blew up the internet this week, right? When she says, maybe we can talk about Surah 31:18. She's talking about, maybe we can read the Quran, basically. And that song she has, A Long Walk. In A Long Walk, it's one of the verses. Yeah, so basically she's saying, let's read the Quran together. But it became the opening verses of Surah chapter 96 of the Quran. The most Islamic historians believe Muhammad was initially disturbed by the revelations. Like, which is what happened to me. I mean, I was told you that stuff used to be like on camera. I mean, in my house, if things were moving around and I was talking to people that nobody else could see and stuff, that's only in my house. But when it was happening on the camera and you guys could see it, I was like, oh no. This is no good. Like, please stop, God. Like, you know, don't do this to me. So I was disturbed too. I understand what this is about. He was disturbed by his revelations and he didn't want to reveal them publicly for several years. I get it. However, tradition states that he welcomed the message from Angel Gabriel and was deeply inspired to share his experience with other potential believers at that point. Islamic tradition holds that the first persons to believe were his wife, Khadijah. So before in the other thing, they spelled her name like Khadijah, which is another actual variation. But this is clearly Khadijah, Khadija, which is how I spell my daughter's name too. So she believed, and she's one of the 4 women. And also his close friend, Abu Bakr, who was regarded as the successor to Muhammad by Sunni Muslims, also believed. Soon, Muhammad began to gather a small following, initially encountering no opposition. Most people in Mecca either ignored him or mocked him as just another prophet. However, when his message condemned idol worship and polytheism, many of Mecca's tribal leaders began to see Muhammad and his message as a threat. Besides going against long-standing beliefs, the condemnation of idol worship had economic consequences for merchants who catered to the thousands of pilgrims who came to Mecca every year. This was especially true for the members of Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh, who were the guardians of the Kaaba. Sensing a threat, Mecca's merchants and leaders offered Muhammad incentives to abandon his preaching, but he refused. That happened to me too. Remember somebody, like my older viewers might remember, somebody offered me like $50,000 to come in and do something with my videos. And I'm like, it's not for me to sell. My gifts aren't for me to sell. You know, they don't belong to me. They belong to the universe. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And, you know, the message isn't for me to sell to somebody, to you guys to take over. Oh, goodness. So yeah. It happened to him too. And he refused. Increasingly, the resistance to Muhammad and his followers grew, and they were eventually forced to immigrate from Mecca to Medina. I don't know about that. He went to Medina because his grandson got killed. He went like on a pilgrimage to Medina. He wasn't just forced to immigrate there. I don't know what that's about. A city, anyway, Medina, it says a city 260 miles to the north. And he went there in the year 622. 622 is the same thing as 613 or 19 or 10. This event marks the beginning of the Muslim calendar. There, Muhammad was instrumental in bringing an end to civil war raging against several of the city's tribes. Muhammad settled in Medina, building his Muslim community and gradually gathering acceptance and more followers. Between 624 and 628, the Muslims were involved in a series of battles for their survival. In the final major confrontation, this might be where it happened, the Battle of the Trench and Siege of Medina, Muhammad and his followers prevailed and a treaty was signed. The treaty was broken by the Meccan allies a year later. By now, Muhammad had plenty of forces and the balance of power had shifted away from Meccan leaders to him. In the year 630, which is 9, the Muslim army marched to Mecca, taking the city with minimum casualties. Muhammad gave amnesty to many of the Meccan leaders who had opposed him and pardoned many others. Most of the Meccan population converted to Islam. Muhammad and his followers then proceeded to destroy all of the statues of pagan gods in and around the Kaaba. After the conflict with Mecca was finally settled, Muhammad took his first true Islamic pilgrimage to that city, and in March of the year 632, which equals 11, he delivered his last sermon at Mount Arafat. Upon his return to Medina, to his wife's home, he fell ill for several days. He died on June 8th, which equals 14, the number of pieces into which King Osiris was cut when he was murdered and left Horus or Heru fatherless as well, in the year 632, which again equals 11. And this happened at the age of 62. He was 62 at the time. He was buried at Al-Masjid an-Nabawi, the Mosque of the Prophet, one of the first mosques built by Muhammad in Medina. And it says at the bottom that they strive for accuracy. And if we see something that doesn't look right, we should contact them. I didn't see anything that didn't look right. I just found it odd that they left out that the reason that he went to Medina was because his grandson was killed. They left out the grandson completely. In any case, that was the story of Muhammad. Should I talk about Osiris now or go on to the planetary situation? Yeah. What do I want to say about Osiris this year? Okay, well, there were 8 original beings. I won't start from how they came to be. I'll just say that they came to be. I've talked about how they came to be before, though. They came to be, there were 8 original beings. 1 female. And that's Isis. 7 males. Horus the Elder. Osiris. Thoth. Geb. Set. I always forget who I mentioned already. I don't remember who I mentioned already. Should I start again? I don't know. There were 7 men. There were 7 men and 1 female. Maybe I'll go over it again. I want to get to Osiris though. Because you guys know I don't write anything down. That's how I did that. I'm like, who did I mention already? Who didn't I mention? It's like when I'm trying to remember all the planets, you know, and it's like, sometimes I forget my own, like my ruling, I forget Mercury, I forget Earth. And I'm like, wait a minute, who did I say already? What did I do already? Anyway, so there were those. Now, they had decided to incarnate. And they went to war in the skies. And ultimately, Ra, that's one of the ones I didn't mention, right? I think so. Ra, yes. I don't remember saying that before. Maybe the other one will come out too. Ra came up with a way to prevent Isis and Osiris from incarnating. And that was to say that the mother that she had created for herself by that point, Nut, which is also very likened to my own mother. My own mother's nickname is Neat, so it's like Newt, Neat. He prevented Newt from having children on any day of the year. So that means basically she couldn't have children ever, you know, in order for them to be incarnated. And Thoth came up with a way by adding 5 extra days to the currently 360-day year. By adding 5 extra days, Newt would be able to have children on these other 5 days. So when she did that, 5 incarnated. Isis, Osiris, Set, Horus the Elder, and Thoth. That's 5. Yes. They all came down here. They were running kingdoms, having a good old time. One day, Set told Osiris he was going to like take him out of town, and then they were going to turn up. He was going to throw him a party. So Isis wasn't with them. She was like in another city. And he had this big party for him. And the centerpiece, right, the piece de resistance, as they say, was this coffin, basically, that he uncovered. It was a big gold box with like all kinds of beautiful jewels all over it. Inlay, right, like, you know, just gorgeous. And everybody wanted this, you know, very fancy and expensive box, right? But sort of like Cinderella, like the glass slipper had a fit. He said, I'm only going to allow who fits in the box to have it. Now, he had already, while Osiris was asleep, he'd already measured him and had the box custom made to fit him. And he didn't know that. So everybody, you know, tries it. Of course, it doesn't fit them. Osiris gets in, fits him. He says, like, you know, it fits me. It's my box. And like, you know, Set is like, yep, it sure is. And like closes the box and like nails it shut. Him and 72 other people. That's another number that's very popular throughout all the scriptures. And a lot of these customs and cultures all the world over. For example, Jesus brings the 2 groups of 72,000. There's your 144,000 again. He dispatches disciples in groups of 72,000, 2 by 2, twice. That's just 144,000. So anyway, he had 72 other people with him to do this to Osiris. Basically, they killed him together. And I'm gonna skip by some pieces, and I guess you can see this. It's a little bit difficult for me to go through all of this. Fast forward in trying to, Isis almost recovered, you know, his body, and so Set got a hold of it again, and basically set it adrift and ended up in the tree, which came to be the tree of life. Like this tree formed and grew like around the coffin. It was inside. The whole tree was beautiful. There were like pieces of trunk and stuff that had been cut away to be included as part of this palace for the king and queen and stuff like that. I'll skip by that part too. Basically, Isis almost got him again, recovered the body, or she did recover the body actually from the tree, and Set got it back from her. Horus ended up defending her, but in the meantime, Set cut up Osiris's body into 13 pieces and then cut his penis off. That was the 14th piece, and then threw it in the ocean and fed it to fish. And then from that day on, no one was allowed to eat that kind of fish anymore from the Nile. Like, it was banned from being eaten, period. But while he was alive, before that, at one point, he had been tricked. And here comes, like, this is where the karmic female comes from. He had been tricked into believing that this other woman was like his wife, you know, or was his true wife or whatever. And so that's from where the karmic comes. It wasn't, he had a time where he was away from Isis, and Isis, being very forgiving, as Geminis are, ended up forgiving them both. But Set was still just evil. And so he went and jealous of Osiris, so he went on to do this. What else did I want to tell you about that? I guess just the part where Thoth also helped Isis to take the 14 pieces, or to take the 13 pieces rather, because again the penis, or phallus as they refer to it, had been fed to the fish. He helped her take the 13 pieces and to craft a new phallus, a new penis out of gold, and to attach that to Osiris and to bring him back to life. And that's how she got pregnant with Horus. And he became, at that point, the first mummy ever, because they wrapped him up. At that time, they wrapped him up with the gauze and stuff, and preserved his body, and he went on to rule the underworld. But he is referred to as the god of the living and the dead. He's referred to by several names, but the god of the living and the dead. So as like the underworld and above ground, very well known in Egypt. And as far as what's myth and what's real life, potentially at least, right? Because people could say we don't know for sure. I know, because I know what I've seen. I know what visions I've had. I know what I've been told, what I've been taught. I just did all that story, even though I was kind of all over the place. I still did it from memory, you know, and it's kind of like difficult and painful for me to do. Osiris has the 2 largest tombs ever discovered in the world. So whether he actually existed and there were people from then that knew he existed and they built him the tombs, or he was just believed to have existed or believed to have been God, he is the one who is recognized as the top, as God. If you want to go all the way back, all of the stuff that we recognized, for example, with Hinduism, you know, with all due respect to the religion and to those who practice it, we credit them with a lot of what came from Kemet, what came from ancient Egypt, you know, and even between Hinduism and that, there's other stuff, you know, but we like, you know, Kundalini is, you know, it's Eastern, tradition, it's Hindu tradition. It really isn't. I mean, like the snakes and stuff, like, you know, the Egyptians were wearing, snakes, Hermes, in Greece and Rome. Okay. He was wearing the Roman culture, Grecian culture, which copies Egyptian culture because they're just a hop, skip, and a jump away or across the river. You know, that predates the Kundalini stuff too. So really part of what I'm here to do, what I'm sent here to do, is to help people to go back to the beginning and to remember of themselves what they're able and to the extent that they're meant to, so that it helps them to do that. It helps them to go back to the original, like the worship of anybody else in connection to this. What God is trying to remind us is there's still a one monotheistic God at the top, and we're all connected in one. We shouldn't be separated in all of these smaller religions. So before Hinduism was Jain, Jain. That was the religion of peace and nonviolence, you know, that on which Hinduism is based, basically. That was it. And like I said, before that, I mean, there was, you know, there was Greece, there was Rome, and before that, there was ancient Egypt, there was Kemet. So he just wants us to remember that. And that's why I'm having to go over this. But I will move on to what is happening in the celestial system now. And maybe I'll do the actual reading separate today. All right, so in the celestial system, we have, it's a big time there too. Busy time there for this week. All right, this week begins with the 18th. So the first major transit that I'm going to mention is November 20th at 7:39 p.m. Neptune will be sesquiquadrate the true node. That kind of means square, right? 13, listen to this, 13 degrees 42. What is that? Another 613 equals 19. All right, 13 and 42. On November 22nd at 4:01 a.m. Oh, 7:39 p.m. I didn't even mention that. That's 19 also. November 20th, which is 11:11 at 7:39 equals 19. Neptune sesquiquadrate true node 13 degrees 42. Another 19. November 22nd at 4:01 a.m. the sun enters Sagittarius. So as I was saying before, the end of Scorpio. November 23rd at 12:39 a.m. So a lot of threes there. 12 and 39 is that 3 equals 6. The full moon, 0 degrees Gemini, 52. Both 0 and 52 or 7 representing God. Right? 0 in supreme math, for example, means cipher. Basically, that's basically God, universe, right? 52 or 7 definitely equals spirituality or God in angel numbers, in numerology, in supreme math, and, you know, several different languages. Even like the Freemason, 7 equals God. The 24th, which is the last day for which this reading is, at 8:08. 808, double eights came up a lot in last week's reading. It might have been in connection to this. 808 equals 16 equals 7 for God again. Neptune goes direct. So I joked on my Facebook today that those who don't typically or hadn't typically had, very much psychic awareness or abilities, or at least not control of them, who may have had more so over the period of Neptune retrograde, are about to turn back into pumpkins. Speaking of like Cinderella again, because when Neptune goes direct, that will be minimized again. But Neptune goes direct, guess what? 13 degrees, 42. Another 613 equals 19. I couldn't make this stuff up if I wanted to. Certainly not years ago in advance. So on that note, you know what? I'm going to read about a little bit about what these things mean, at least the Neptune square North Node. And then I'll wrap this up and I'll come back separately to do the actual reading. Neptune square North Node. Take a stand. This is written by a woman named Kelly Fox, and the website is theastrologer.com. You tend to just drift along in your love affairs, going where the wind takes you, so to speak. If you look at the various people you've been involved with in the past, they might all be different from one another, with the exception of the fact that all of them came onto you first. You don't really have a type because you have a hard time taking a firm stance on anything or moving resolutely in one direction or the other. For this reason, your hookups have largely happened because the other person pursued you, and most of your breakups have occurred when they end up moving on and leaving you behind. Because you're just content to drift, or are you? Actually, a feeling of dissatisfaction tends to pervade your soul at a deep level. You're not really sure what you want, and maybe you're just a little bit afraid of taking a stand on something. Because what if you end up pushing for something or someone that turns out to be not right for you after all? But just drifting along, letting everyone else make all the decisions doesn't work either. You probably feel like your romantic future is unclear. And it is. But you should still try to discern a firm direction and pursue it. So those with Neptune square North Node in their actual natal chart, I guess we'll feel these things even stronger, but this is some of through what we may go when that happens. As far as the sun entering Sagittarius, you know what that means. Mercury is also there in Sagittarius, retrograde, actually, as of today, November 16th, the day on which I am preparing this reading. Jupiter is also there. Jupiter, its ruler, right? Ruler of Sagittarius, also there as of about a week or two ago. And that's it. In a couple of weeks, a week or two, the moon will be there also. But yeah, those three bodies are there. So speaking of the moon, again, the next day is the full moon in Gemini. I'll do a separate reading on the moon. And then Neptune direct, I already told you what that means for me, at least. It just means that we're going to stop having maybe some of the really heightened dreams and things, visions, other types of psychic awareness, super strong intuition, maybe a deeper connection to unconditional love and higher love than we had felt previously, or perhaps ever before. That will sort of return to normal when Neptune goes direct. All right, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Maybe you learned something. I hope so. And it didn't just sound like I was running my mouth. I will be back with these actual cards here. I'm not going to change anything about them. They are already shuffled and ready for the reading. So I'll be back in just a bit. Namaste, angels. It's so